BBC Sounds. Music, radio, podcasts.
Hello, I'm Andrew Petrie and this is the Scottish Football Podcast. All the news, views and analysis you need on Monday the 17th of March. And what a game we had earlier on Sunday.
Eagleman's just to the edge of the box, he shoots, he scores! Rangers score! Hamza Eagleman leathers it into the top right corner! Away from a despairing Schmeichel!
Celtic and Rangers served up an absolute thriller. And that wasn't the only derby taking place.
Up steps Simon Murray to score! Dundee have won it at Tannadice! Simon Murray has gone all the way down to the Dundee United end to celebrate.
Dundee ended their Tannadice hoodoo in style. And on Saturday, in the Championship, the season's latest managerial casualty.
Not long ago, Callum Davidson took Queen's Park to victory over Rangers at Ibrox. I understand tonight that he has been relieved of his duties.
There's plenty more to round up from yesterday's games.
The Scottish Football Podcast from BBC Sport Scotland.
Well, lots to discuss with our guest Stephen McGowan, freelance football writer, and Cammy Bell, former Rangers and Dundee United goalkeeper. Where else to start but the win for Rangers at Celtic Park? A real game of two halves, the old cliché, but Celtic showed a lot more determination in that second half. Stephen, did you think they were going to come back and maybe even snatch it for themselves before Rangers' late goal?
I think everybody probably did think with 14 minutes to go, Celtic would go on and steamroll the game, but I think what you saw today was, for Celtic, probably quite alarming, because that's now 3 games against Rangers where they've lost 9 goals. Excellent result for Rangers, a really good first half performance. They clung on a bit in the second half, but you wouldn't necessarily begrudge them their win. I think what it showed today was that Celtic squad, actually, when you have 2 or 3 injuries, can be a bit wafer thin. There weren't too many options for Brendan Rodgers when they had to bring players on. In contrast, you look at the triple substitution that Barry Ferguson made at the end there, where Hamza Eagleman really was the key man. Okay, there's a bit of fortune, some poor defending from Celtic, from Cameron Carter-Vickers, from Alistair Johnson, but I think Rangers will feel they were worth that victory, and I think they will feel, actually, that they've now got the measure of Celtic.
Absolutely. And Cammy, what a start Rangers made. Nico Raskin with a goal, got an assist as well. A terrific display from him. Has he become kind of Rangers' key player in that midfield?
Yeah, definitely. For me, he's certainly one of Rangers' key players at this moment in time. Brilliant performance today from start to finish. As you say, the goal, the assist, but everything else that he done, just his hard work in there. And again, whether that's Barry Ferguson having that sort of chat with him, being an ex-midfielder in that sort of same type of role. But yeah, he's certainly thriving on it at this moment in time. And Rangers were good today. Again, the press was really good. They pressed together. Again, they'd done it at the right times as well, and they made it really difficult for Celtic today. They did. They made Celtic work to get out from the back, which they weren't successful in a number of times. And yeah, I felt as if Barry Ferguson and his backroom staff team got it absolutely spot on with their tactics today.
And Cammy, in a parallel universe where Philippe Clement's still the Rangers manager, if his side had thrown away a 2-0 lead at Celtic Park and it was 2-2, do you see his side going on to get a winner, and how much of a difference has Barry Ferguson made to that side? Do you think he is the kind of reason that they have this newfound mentality?
Yeah, I do. I firmly do. I believe that, again, he's installing this in the players about the winning mentality that's needed at Rangers. He's given the players belief as well. Listen, he knows it's a team that's been battered and bruised all season from, again, externally results that they've had. So he's had to pick them up off the floor. But I firmly believe he's done that. I firmly believe there was always a team there for me. There was always a team in there, and it was just finding the confidence and, again, the players understanding exactly what was expected of them on the pitch. And I think they're at a place now they really do understand that. They're playing with a huge amount of energy as well, and aggression. And I think that comes directly from the manager and his backroom staff as well.
And Stephen, you touched on the fact that Celtic were missing players. Austin Trusty not there, Liam Scales not there, and the big one, Callum McGregor. Is it as simple as saying Celtic were missing some of their leaders today and that's why they were perhaps so uncharacteristically slack, or was there something else to it?
I think it is too simplistic, and I think the reason for that is if you look at it, Callum McGregor played at Hampden in the Premier Sports Cup final, and he played at Ibrox and Rangers won 3-0. So, you can see, I think any Celtic fan, and you do hear it more and more these days, criticising Callum McGregor. I think they'll be a bit more canny before they do that in future. But that said, I just think Rangers have found a style of playing, certainly against Celtic and in Europe, where they sit in, they pound some mistakes, they set traps. As Cammy referred to there, they have an excellent pressing game. But, nothing's really changed in respect to the fact they've got to start doing that in these games against the low block, in venues like Dundee and Motherwell and Paisley and so on. And I would want to see more of a body of work from Barry Ferguson before I would be rushing to pass judgment just yet.
And that's the kind of key question, isn't it? I know as these results go on, obviously getting the win against Fenerbahce and a big win today at Celtic Park, there will be calls, naturally, I think, for Barry Ferguson to get the job permanently. Cammy, do you think it's still too early for that? Or do you think he's actually building a pretty impressive CV that might be too difficult for the Rangers board to kind of look away from?
Listen, there's going to be new owners at the club, so they'll make the decision. But all Barry Ferguson can do is win games of football. That's what he said when he came in, is to win games of football. And again, for whether he'll obviously want to be the Rangers manager long term, but again, even for his own managerial career, he's not doing himself any harm at all, because again, this week's been a fantastic week for Rangers, progressing in European football, getting that win at Celtic Park. Listen, he's doing himself no harm at all. But again, I think it is probably too early to say, yes, he's the man for the job. And again, the fans can call for what they want, but I think these guys at the top, when they come into the club, they'll assess it and they'll make the decision.
Would you agree with that, Stephen? Would it be a surprise to see Ferguson given a crack at it permanently?
I think it would be a mistake to do it at this point. I agree with Cammy. I think there's going to be new owners coming in. I think they've said they want a sporting director as well. I think it would make sense to get a sporting director in and pretty much let him take control of hiring the head coach. Whether that'll happen, I don't know. What I do feel is that naturally a bit suspicious of giving these jobs to interim managers quite quickly and early. If you look at Barry Robson at Aberdeen, you look at Stephen Naismith at Hearts, you even look at Ole Gunnar Solskjaer at Manchester United, your heart can roll the head sometimes. As I say, I'd just like to see a bit more of a body of work in the final games of the season and just see Barry Ferguson building something. I can well see why the fans would want an iconic figure to be their manager, but I think it's still too early for me just now.
And just again, touching on the game from a Celtic perspective, obviously Brendan Rodgers made that change at halftime, bringing Nicholas Kuhn off, bringing Adam Ida on. Stephen, did he get his side wrong, maybe tactically, at the start of this one?
Well, I think that's the few games when Rangers have played a certain way and Celtic have failed to adapt, actually. They failed to deal with it, the intensity, the aggression. I think before the game, Brendan Rodgers was asked, would Callum McGregor's absence make a difference to the way his team played? And he said, well, no, we don't change the way we play. Well, I think they're getting to a point where they play against Rangers now where they might have to give some serious consideration to changing the way they play, because Rangers appear to have their number. They seem to have found Celtic out. Again, people say it's only 3 games, but I think if Celtic go to Ibrox in the final game of the season, then they've got to go to the first game of next season, and you see a repeat of this pattern, I think people will be quite alarmed. That said, I think, as I said earlier, I think 2 or 3 injuries for Celtic has exposed a slight lack of depth in the squad. They have the money. I think over the summer they have to go out and spend it on some quality players, and they can do that.
And just finally on this game, Cammy, the kind of most notable or noticeable thing for a lot of people watching on the television was the fact that there were Rangers fans in the ground. First time we've had away fans in this fixture for a wee while now. How much of an impact did that have on the game? And I suppose from a neutral-ish perspective, how pleasing was that to see?
Listen, it's great. I think that's what we want. We want away fans in the stadiums. It brings to the atmosphere. And again, we need to do it sensibly. Hopefully we can build them numbers up in the future. That's potentially what we'll be looking at. But yeah, it was brilliant to see fans back in the stadium, Rangers fans getting to see their team put on a brilliant performance today and get them 3 points that were much needed. And that win over Celtic is so important. So it was refreshing to see them back in the stadium, and hopefully it can continue.
Well, a very interesting game at Celtic Park. It might not have too much of an impact on the league standings at the end of the year. It certainly impacted the mood around Glasgow. Now, let's turn our attention to Tannadice, where Dundee hadn't won since 2004. I suppose, did anyone see that result coming? Dundee had the ball in the United net 5 times before the half-time whistle. Only 3 of those goals stood. But Stephen, just an incredible game for Tony Docherty's side.
I thought the first half was remarkable. I mean, Dundee were running all over the top of United. As you say, it could easily have been 5-1 at half-time, probably should have been. You know, the goal from Trapanowski gave Dundee United hope in the beginning of the second half. But, you know, Dundee were comfortable winners in the end, I thought. You know, I mean, obviously the penalty gave it a good gloss in the scoreline. But what a big win that is for Dundee. I mean, it's a bad day for St Johnstone and for Kilmarnock because Dundee now have a 6-point gap over St Johnstone at the bottom. You know, Kilmarnock now only have a 1-point advantage over that point they got yesterday. Could be a big point now, of course. But, I mean, really, it's really put the cat amongst the pigeons at the bottom of the league. And it raises questions about Dundee United as well, because I think most people would have said they would definitely be top 6 coming the end of the season. Well, there's a little bit of doubt over that now, isn't there?
There absolutely is. I think they're only 3 points ahead of 7th placed Motherwell, so still so much to play for. Cammy, I just want to get the footballer's perspective on this, because in the media we like to make a lot of these long runs, 21 years it had been since Dundee won at Tannadice. When a run's gone on that long, far before your time at a club, is that something that footballers ever pay attention to? Or is it something that they just completely forget about?
I think it's something you're aware of, certainly, and the club will obviously make you aware of it. And especially when you've played in 2 or 3 derbies and they haven't went your way and you can't find that victory, it will start to play on your mind a little bit. I don't think it changes too much as a player. But yeah, listen, it was an astonishing win for Dundee today, and an outstanding one as well at that. As Stephen said there, they could have been out of sight in that first half. They were absolutely brilliant, run over the top of Dundee United. And Dundee United just didn't know what had hit them at that point. And again, probably nobody's seen that coming, because Dundee have really struggled this season. They really have. They've been very inconsistent. They concede a lot of goals. And today, it just seemed to click for them. Again, they were so much of a threat going forward. And it was a brilliant, brilliant victory for them.
And you kind of mentioned it there. Dundee United didn't know what had hit them. How hard is it to regroup on the pitch when you're facing wave after wave of attack in a game where you probably weren't expecting that?
It's difficult. Again, obviously, to change that momentum within a game, you're looking for, again, somebody to produce a moment of quality to get yourself back in it. And Dundee United had them sort of moments where they got close to Dundee, but then Dundee were they were relentless today in their attacking force, and they just kept on going. They looked as if they could score at any moment in time when they were attacking. Simon Murray's a big player for them up front. He's a real worker and just produces that energy that festers through the whole team. So it is difficult to change momentum within a game. And Dundee United just couldn't find that today. They couldn't find the formula to make that change and get back in the game. And Dundee were worthy winners for me.
You know, it's funny, Andrew, just when Cammy's talking there about Simon Murray, and people will mock this idea, they'll laugh about it, but see if you get into the last 10 minutes of Scotland against Greece and you're needing an impact player to come on, you would love to see Simon Murray running around, wouldn't you? Giving him absolute chaos. And okay, he's the wrong side of 30 now, but his energy and his personality and what he brings to the team is just relentless and so inspirational for Dundee, I think.
And he's having one of his most prolific seasons as well. I mean, there would have been a time years ago where you would have mocked the fact that Lyndon Dykes could have gotten into the Scotland team. Look how he's gone on to do. So I don't think Simon Murray is as ridiculous as a shout as you might think, Stephen. But for Dundee United, we were talking about their top 6 chances there. I'm looking at their fixtures they've got before the split. Ross County away, Hearts away, and St Johnstone at home. On paper, that's maybe favourable. But after such a morale-sapping loss, Stephen, how hard will it be for Jim Goodwin to try and pick them back up and get what they need from those games?
Yeah, I mean, the one thing you would say about Dundee United is usually they're quite sturdy, they're well organised, they're hard to beat. But I mean, you look at Jack Walton, the second Dundee goal, I think it was today, where he's a horrible, horrible error. Cammy's better qualified in this stuff than I am. And how a goalkeeper or a team bounces back from that. But it just begins to feel as if suddenly some of the momentum they had when they were beating Rangers, when they were getting a point against Celtic at Tannadice, has begun to just drift away a little bit. But don't forget that Dundee United are still And Jim Goodwin's the name. It's still relatively new to the Scottish Premiership scene. So, what they've done has been fantastic. But I think they will be really disappointed if they slip out of that top 6 because, they've worked so hard to get there. And you would think they should still manage to do it by hook or by crook.
Yeah, that Jack Walton mistake. Pretty uncharacteristic, really. From what we've seen of him this season, he's been fantastic in goal for Dundee United. Cammy, I'll get the Goalkeepers Union involved here. What have you made of him? What did you make of the mistake? And how hard is it to put that out of your mind? Because there were times for the remainder of that game where he looked pretty nervous.
Yeah, again, it always rocks you when you make a mistake in a game, and you've got to have that mentality to get over it pretty quickly. Listen, he's been brilliant this season. He's been absolutely fantastic. I think he's a top goalkeeper. Yes, the mistake today was very costly because, again, I think the timing of the goal as well and the way that it went in, as you say, the reaction from himself, he looked very nervous throughout the game. But he'll need to dust himself down. He'll need to get over that because he's been very consistent this season. So, yeah, I think the Dundee United fans will cut him a little bit of slack.
I'm going to put both of you on the spot quickly before we move on. Looking at the top 6, obviously Celtic and Rangers are there. We'll say probably Hibs as well. So let's see, who are your other 3 teams? Who are you backing for the top 6? You've got Aberdeen, Dundee United, Hearts, Motherwell, St Mirren, and maybe even Ross County in there. Who are you backing?
For me, I'm going to go with the top 6 that are there just now. I think Hearts are only going to get stronger. Obviously, just a point clear of Motherwell, 3-4 points. You never write off St Mirren for that perspective. But the funny thing is, I mean, you can disagree about the order, but actually, if you look at Scottish football over the years historically, the top 6 right now is as it should be. You've got Celtic, Rangers, Hibs, Aberdeen, Dundee, and Hearts. I think that most people's rationale about the top 6 clubs, I think they still will be coming to split.
I'm going to be boring as well, Andrew. I think that is going to be the top 6 as it stands. I agree with Stephen. When you look at that for us is our strongest 6 in Scottish football, in my opinion. But yeah, I think all them clubs will get enough points between now and the split to remain in that top 6.
I think for me, Michael Vimmer's Motherwell might just sneak it, but we'll have to see.
Interesting point.
Who drops out, Andrew?
I'll annoy someone. I would say Hearts or United.
I think, if I would say anyone was going to drop out, I would say Dundee United, actually. I don't see it being Hearts, but yeah, really interesting shout that.
I think Hearts have flattered to deceive a bit at times. I know they've had this really good run under Neil Critchley, but I'm just not sure they've got the substance. We'll see. And we'll have to look back as well on Saturday's fixtures. Falkirk beat Queen's Park 4-0 in the Championship. They're now 9 points clear at the top of the table, not likely to be caught. Stephen, you talked about big teams in Scotland, how that top 6, the current teams there are probably the biggest in Scotland. Are Falkirk one of the top 12 biggest teams in the Premiership? Should they be coming back?
Oh, listen, you're asking a guy who went to primary school in Dunfermline to talk about Falkirk. I mean, I think Falkirk would be an undoubted asset to the Premiership. There's no question about that. Both in terms of what they bring as an infrastructure, in terms of their support. I think the way they play football has been a delight at times this season. Watching them, watching them defy the Championship games and really playing proper football. They're not a Route 1 team. They are not unpretty in the eye at all. They would be a huge asset, and I think absolutely they'll be heading for promotion. I think actually the more interesting point is going to be the playoff place, because you've got Livingston there, although there's obviously they've got a bit of a challenge to be United and so on, and then we'll look to see who's going to be team for the Premiership. That's almost a bigger question at this point, I think. The
result also led to Callum Davidson losing his job as Queen's Park boss. That seems quite tough on him, Cammy, after such a historic result against Rangers just a few weeks ago.
Yeah, again, it was quite surprising how quickly it was done after the game as well. That was probably one of the big things for me, that it was done so soon after a result, which is always raw with a manager. But yeah, listen, we know that Rangers result's fresh in our mind. It was a huge result for the club. But again, they've not really had a consistent run of form in the league. They've struggled recently as well. So you can see why they've maybe looked at making the change, but I still think it's very harsh on Callum, and possibly they could have given him to the end of the season, then made a decision from there.
I think there's been pressure on there, Andrew, for Queen's Park to play the young players, and I just don't know that Callum Davis has been particularly settled there for some time. I think there's been situations behind the scenes. I think a parting of the ways is probably always going to happen. I think just a surprise that happened at this juncture a month after that Rangers game.
Very surprising indeed. We'll have to keep an eye on what happens down at Lesser Hampden. Back to the Premiership. Hibs stayed third and unbeaten in 14 in the league after a draw at Kilmarnock. But it was a late goal that they lost. Is that kind of the Hibs of old sneaking in again? It looked like they'd done enough for the 3 points.
Yeah, I think they did again. They started brilliantly with Martin Boyle getting the goal and giving them a league at Rugby Park. We all know is a difficult place to go. And it looked like they were going to get that 3 points again. But Fraser Murray pops up with the goal against his old side as well. So it was an important goal for Kilmarnock for me. I think they needed to get a result out of that because they are struggling in the league. But from a Hibs point of view, listen, it keeps that unbeaten run going in the league. David Gray he'll be disappointed, but he won't be too worried about that result because, as I say, Rugby Park's a difficult place to go to.
Yeah, I think Derek McInnes said his side's chances of the top 6 are now over. We'll have to see if he's right about that. Elsewhere, Hearts moved into the top 6 with a 2-0 win over Ross County. Not the best performance, but I think results elsewhere went their way. Motherwell departed the top 6 despite coming from 2 goals down to draw with St Mirren. 4 goals, a red card and 14 minutes of added on time. The game had just about everything. But, Stephen, a result that probably neither side would be too happy with.
Certainly not. It's a burn after about 2-0 up. To be honest, I think the big talking point from that game was a ridiculous red card for Olisanya. I thought it was a ludicrous second yellow, certainly. I think anybody who looks at that would see just 2 players coming together in an impact clash. And I think for the referee, Grant Irvin, to see that as a red card was just bizarre for me. And just another question which is creeping over the stand of the Scottish refereeing this season. But let's be honest, there's quite a long list now.
I couldn't agree more, to be honest. And Cammy, we know the rule with appeals and red cards, because that was a second yellow, St Mirren can't appeal it. Does that law need to be looked at? Because it seems ridiculous that they'll lose Olisanya for that. Yeah, no,
I think it does. Again, when there's these teams are getting punished for poor decisions and wrong decisions, for me, again, I totally agree with Stephen that it's not a yellow card at all. That and again, St Mirren need to feel the brunt of that, and they lose a player and they can't appeal it. So I think that definitely needs to be looked at going forward. But I agree with Stephen. There is a lot of poor decisions creeping into the game. Yes, they've been more transparent this year. And coming out and having conversations. But the most important thing about refereeing is getting the decisions right, and hopefully we shouldn't be talking about too many of the wrong ones.
Well, that's it. And if you've not seen it, it was an aerial battle in which Toyosi Olisanya jumps in and it's just a coming together. He gets his second yellow, he's off. Just ridiculous. If you've not seen it, of course, watch it on Sports Scene. So the final game from the Premiership, St Johnstone and Aberdeen playing a drab goalless draw. Both managers will be relieved to avoid defeat, but not really ideal for either again, Stephen.
Well, as we said earlier on, that Dundee derby result was pretty bad for St Johnstone. They're now 5 points adrift of Dundee, or 4 goals worse off Kilmarnock, or 6 points ahead of them in 10th place. You've seen signs of life at St Johnstone under Simo Valakari, but it almost feels like 1 step forwards followed by 2 steps back sometimes. And you just wonder whether time is beginning to run out a little bit of opportunities. But you know what? How many times have we seen when you get to that bottom 6 spot and they start playing each other, the nerves creep in, they start cutting each other's throat? I don't think it's done yet.
Well, we're certainly in for an interesting end to the season. That's all we've got time for today. Remember, we're here with new episodes of the Scottish Football Podcast bright and early every day. So to make sure you don't miss out, subscribe on BBC Sounds and have push notifications turned on your phone. Many thanks to Stephen McGowan and Cammy Bell for joining me. And thank you for listening. Goodbye.
For everything you need to know about your team this season, download the BBC Sport app. All the latest news, goal updates, stats and scores, and insight and analysis. Just select your club to get the biggest stories and best content at your fingertips. What a result. Download the BBC Sport app for everything you need to know about your team this season.